Bye-bye, birdie.
Antiheroes are oftentimes a lot more fun to watch and read about rather than your cut-and-dry regular heroes.
Boom! Spoiler alert.
There's a wild card element to an antihero where you never quite know if they're going to do the right thing for the right reasons, and it's fun to see them outside the constraints of normal heroics. But throughout both Marvel and DC, who are some of the strongest antiheroes out there? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about today. Today I'm ranking the strongest antiheroes from both Marvel and DC. How do they stack up against each other? Deadpool, The Punisher, Harley Quinn, Black Adam, I'm talking about them all right now. I mean, come on, of course Deadpool was first on this list. He's Deadpool. He's wiped out all the Marvel universe, like multiple times.
No. Come on, let's go, cough it up.
Has anyone else done that? I don't think so. Although he may not be the strongest in terms of brute strength, there are several factors that make Deadpool the strongest antihero. The first is his extraordinary healing factor. You can do basically anything to him and he'll always just put himself back together and continue the fight. You don't need to always overpower your enemy, you just need to outlast them, or annoy them to death, which is something Deadpool is excellent at. The other factor Deadpool has on his side is the fact that he's one of the rare characters who knows he's in a comic book. That does give him quite the advantage. If a regular hero were to beat him, Deadpool could just find the comic book writer's house, threaten him, and force the writer to rewrite the ending. And the greatest thing about Deadpool? We love to watch him do this. For an antihero to work, you have to enjoy watching them be semi-bad and a little wild, and I would imagine we'd all line up for Deadpool 56 in 30 years, right?
¿Dónde está la biblioteca?
Black Adam is extremely powerful. I mean, The Rock is playing him in a movie. Of course he's going to be a powerful dude.
Big mistake.
But he's one of the strongest antiheroes on this list. And I say antihero, which is true, but he's one of those characters, like a lot on this list, who started off as a pure villain and has slowly developed into something more neutral. And that's probably a good thing too, because if Black Adam was a pure villain forever, I don't think mankind would survive for very long. In the comics, he's just like Shazam, where he has all these godlike powers and is practically unbeatable. He is a rare character in that he's been part of the Justice Society of America and the Secret Society of Supervillains, which goes to show how his interests can lean good or bad. Lately, he's been more of an anti-hero in the comics and often fights for the right reasons, but doesn't care at all about collateral damage. It will be very interesting seeing how the live-action Black Adam handles this aspect of Black Adam's character, because I feel like whenever a superhero movie boasts an anti-hero, it really just means a secret hero on the inside.
I kneel before no one.
With Namor being the upcoming antagonist to Black Panther Wakanda Forever, it's important to note the character's history. He's a character who's been both a pure villain and a straightforward hero depending on who's writing for him. But I think what makes Namor great is that he's always fighting for the good of the Atlanteans, but that also means he'll always choose them over the surface world, which, can you really blame him? But although he's a water-based anti-hero, he's still incredibly strong. Namor is also a mutant, which is why he has wings on his feet that allow him to fly. And I've always found that almost unfair. Like, you have a hero who can beat you both in water and in air? Pick one, my guy. This video is being made before Wakanda Forever comes out, and I'm super interested in whether Namor will become an anti-hero in the MCU, or if it will be a one-movie role. I can't see him only sticking around for one movie, right? I think everyone I mentioned so far, you would believe could be heroes or villains just by looks, right? Yeah, I hate to judge a book by its cover, and that's something you should never, ever do, but come on, Venom looks villainous, right? His name is Venom. That's not a hero's name, but it goes to show how much love and interest there is in the character for Venom to have shed his 90s villain status and evolved into a full-fledged anti-hero. Venom is a symbiote who you do not want to meet in a dark alley somewhere. If he catches you mugging someone or jaywalking or just slightly bending the law, there's a chance he's going to eat your brain. He's earned his Lethal Protector moniker, which I do find is a great nickname. And in live action, I think the Venom movies have done an okay job in how it portrays Venom's anti-hero status. I'm just saying, I wish Eddie would let Venom eat more brains, that's all. So an antihero is a protagonist that has more flaws than your average run-of-the-mill hero. They'll do the right thing, but maybe the path to get there won't be as shiny and squeaky clean as you'd imagine. That's why I put Wolverine on this list. He's a hero for sure, but his rage and general gruffness toward the people around him makes it hard to ever embrace him as a true hero. Like, sure, he'll always spring into action to save the day, but if someone is being a huge jerk to him, then that might be the last time that person can breathe without an oxygen tube. Whenever he's with the X-Men, it's interesting because he's a very independent person who goes where he wants to go. He definitely marches to the beat of his own drum, and we all respect him for that, most of the time. Okay, I know there are some who probably won't like Harley Quinn this high on the list. And I get it, in a pure fist fight, Harley would most likely lose to a few of the characters below her, but I think there's more to strength than just brute force. Harley is scrappy, she's smart, she's fearless, and the people around her tend to like her the more they get to know her. That's an important element, especially in Gotham's underworld. And her story and rise to power is probably the best out of anyone on this list. Who would have thought a character who first appeared in an animated series would grow to be one of comics' most popular antiheroes? Although comic Loki has slightly shifted over to more anti-hero status lately, there's really nothing that compares to the MCU's Loki, who is definitely more of an anti-hero than anything.
I was a robot and I didn't know it.
And yes, it feels like a bit of a retcon. At first, he was just trying to win his father's approval, but then he went and tried to conquer Earth and killed a bunch of people. But then the MCU walked that back a bit by saying, yes, that was Loki, but it was also a corrupted version of Loki because of the Mind Stone. Sure, and then we had to watch two different versions of Loki go on their own hero's journey. And now Loki has reluctantly found himself to be one of the last lines of defense against uber big bad Kang the Conqueror. Now that he basically is fighting to save the multiverse from Kang, it makes things pretty darn funny.
Everything burns.
An antihero often will have noble intentions and a pretty good heart that points them toward saving people, but they'll also often work in their own best interests. And that brings me to John Constantine. Man, first of all, can you believe we're getting a Constantine sequel with Keanu Reeves? Did I dream that? As much as I love that, it's kind of a shame because Matt Ryan has steadily become the defining version of the character over the last few years. But anyways, Constantine is definitely a strong antihero. His knowledge of the occult and his abilities makes him what I believe to be one of the most powerful DC characters around. We're lucky that he likes to basically hop around doing whatever he feels like at any given time, often indulging in a lot of different vices, because if he focused on being a pure bad guy, then we'd be in trouble. Yeah, of course the Punisher would be on this list. He had to be, right? Frank Castle's crusade against the criminal underworld is legendary, and the very definition of an antihero. Yes, he's eliminating some pretty bad people, but he's not someone who should be emulated. He's even said as much. In Frank's eyes, he's doing what's necessary and starting his own wars so others don't have to. He believes in justice, but doesn't have that much faith in the justice system, and also basically believes in that old eye for an eye mantra. Yeah, if the Punisher is after you, even though he's just a man with a lot of guns, his steely determination makes him one scary opponent. For a guy with a name like Deathstroke, you'd be surprised how much of an anti-hero he can be. Traditionally, Deathstroke has been a villain, and I'm sure a certain generation recognizes him most as a Teen Titans enemy. And yes, while that's true, it's always been slightly difficult to label him as a full-on bad guy. The thing about Deathstroke is that he has morals and a code that he follows. There are people in his life that he cares about deeply, and most of the people he assassinates are people who kind of deserve it. In recent years, Deathstroke has tried to be a good guy and even be a hero, but in his own special Deathstroke way. But I'll say, although he's been both, I prefer Deathstroke as an anti-hero rather than a full-on villain. What do you think? Cable is a character who I hope we see more of in live action. Now that Deadpool is teaming up with Wolverine, I'm afraid the role of lovable but gruff straight man to Wade's wackiness is now taken, which is a shame given the Cable and Deadpool chemistry in Deadpool 2. But yeah, Cable is a good guy technically in that he wants to save the future and stop all the evil bad guys, but he often doesn't mind shooting you in the face in order to win a fight. That's something a lot of other heroes frown upon. But hey, if you were Cable and came from a destroyed future and needed to come back in time to save the world, I imagine you'd be a little lax in your moral codes too. The main man himself is here. That's right, Lobo. You know, it's funny that in an alternate universe somewhere, Dwayne Johnson is probably gearing up to star in his Lobo movie rather than Black Adam. But Lobo is a pure antihero. I mean, he's an intergalactic space bounty hunter. How many intergalactic space bounty hunters have you met that were just straight up heroes? Or just villains? None. They're all antiheroes. Being a bounty hunter, Lobo gets to track down some truly despicable individuals across the cosmos and collect some coin while doing it. So he's technically doing the right thing, but his cocky personality and always looking out for himself above all others definitely puts him in anti-hero territory. Mark Spector started off as a mercenary who had a brush with death while in Egypt but was resurrected by the moon god Khonshu, becoming Moon Knight in the process. As Moon Knight, Mark is the fist of Khonshu and deals the god's vengeance and justice to those who Khonshu wishes to see punished. It's not a perfect system by any means, but you can't deny that Moon Knight has stopped a lot of bad guys over the years. It's just that sometimes Moon Knight can go a little overboard, and it leads to extreme cases of brutality and rage, which is something that isn't exactly befitting a true everyday hero. There's even a comic arc where Moon Knight becomes one of the most dangerous villains on Earth in the Age of Khonshu event, so you know that he's always capable of so much worse.
Yep, I completely agree.
Rorschach is a DC character, and mainly any of the Watchmen you could technically classify as an antihero. They're all doing the right thing, but aren't afraid to do whatever is necessary in order to do it. Rorschach, in particular, is especially dangerous. He lives in a broken world and understands how broken it is, which means he isn't afraid to eliminate the bad people by beating them to a pulp or throwing them down elevator shafts or something. But Rorschach is a different level of antihero than others on this list, because the world he inhabits is so different from the one Moon Knight or Deadpool inhabits. He's still an anti-hero, but one of the more complicated ones on this list. Sometimes an anti-hero just has a more complicated past than other straightforward heroes. Steve Rogers wanted to be a hero, became a hero, then was frozen a hero, then came out a hero, so yeah, he's a hero. But Bucky Barnes is a different story. He started off as a hero, but then was brainwashed and became Russia's best assassin as the Winter Soldier. After snapping out of it and trying to revert back to his heroic roots, it was a little difficult because of all the people whose lives he took over the decades. That's a tough thing to grapple with.
Stop the car!
He's a great hero and does a lot of good things now, but the most interesting part of his character is watching him struggle with who he was when he wasn't in control. As a frequent Suicide Squad member, Deadshot is pretty strong, at least to mere humans. Yeah, up against gods or something, Deadshot isn't that effective, but for anyone whose weakness is bullets, yeah, Deadshot is pretty dangerous. He's an incredible marksman who rarely ever misses, so watch out. And sure, a lot of the time he's doing the right thing because he doesn't want his head to explode, but there's always been an element in Deadshot stories where he's clearly not as villainous as a lot of other bad guys, and does want to do some good overall. Yelena in the MCU is based on a comic character, but Florence Pugh has made her version her own.
Hi!
I was convinced before the Black Widow movie came out that the film would end with Yelena having a clear path toward becoming the next Black Widow and joining the Avengers, but clearly I was wrong. Instead, Yelena is off doing her own thing, and yes, she's rescuing other Black Widows who have been brainwashed, but she also seems like she's been taking the casual assassin job here and there, and definitely wanted to kill Hawkeye. Will her portrayal in the Thunderbolts movie be more heroic or more anti-heroic? Catwoman has no powers, isn't trained by ninjas or a league of assassins, isn't necessarily an all-powerful sharpshooter, but even without all of that, she is never someone who should be underestimated. She knows how to infiltrate and burgle and get whatever she wants. Catwoman is often seen doing the right thing, but if there's a huge jewel that she can snatch while doing the right thing, then yeah, that's a win-win. When Jason Todd came back as Red Hood, he was definitely a bit angrier and more gun-loving and kill-happy than he ever was as Robin. And here's the thing, in Gotham City, you kind of need to be an anti-hero if you ever want to get anything done. You've got to be willing to get a little dirty and maybe a little more violent, or else the criminal underworld will eat you up and spit you out. So while Red Hood's methods are extreme and a little brutal, he's a very engaging anti-hero to watch. And finally, it's a shame the Jonah Hex live-action movie was such a dud, because Jonah Hex is a great antihero. Hey, look at that, another bounty hunter. Hex lives in the old Wild West. Of course he's going to be an antihero. He's grumpy, he's a little mean, he has a quick trigger finger, but it's a lawless land out there. Someone with Superman's personality wouldn't survive 3 days in Jonah Hex's environment. And his anger is a little understandable given that everyone looks at him with disgust thanks to his face scarring. Does Jonah Hex deserve another shot at live-action DC superstardom? I think so. What about you? If you teamed up all the Marvel antiheroes against all the DC antiheroes, who would win? That's a tough question. Could Deadpool beat Black Adam? Could Constantine out-magic Loki? Who knows? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching CBR.